facilities implemented emergency protocols and prepared backup generation and response crews. The security forces, the JDF and the JCF, were placed on heightened readiness to support rescue, maintain order, and assist local authorities. Simultaneously, the government engaged the food, fuel, and transportation sectors to safeguard supply chains, while the Fair Trading Commission and...
It's the final game, folks. This one wins the series. If it's important, it's not worth compromising, which is why with Farmers, you don't have to compromise quality to get great savings on your insurance. Here, take mine.
We are farmers. Bum, 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 bum.
Got black fire at 101 pound.
State of readiness to safeguard our people and enable a rapid transition to relief and recovery. Madam Speaker, as we move forward from the initial shock of Hurricane Melissa, the government's response is being guided by a clear, structured, and disciplined framework. We are pursuing
Hello guys, Parliament is in session.
Overlapping phases.
Let's sit back and listen to Parliament being in session, all right?
Relief, stabilization, and recovery. And then long-term reconstruction and rebuilding. Each phase carries distinct priorities, but all share a single purpose: protecting the lives and dignity of our people and restoring our nation with greater resilience than before. The immediate relief phase began even before the hurricane had fully passed.
You're there.
In those critical hours, our priority was to safeguard life and maintain essential order.
You're there.
Search and rescue operations were initiated in affected communities as soon as it was safe to deploy teams.
You're there. A true charter.
Emergency shelters continue to operate at scale.
So when my traffic tell we said before Hurricane he had all these things put in place.
Our uniform services secure critical infrastructure, while ODPEM, municipal disaster teams, and
the Prime Minister said man all these wonderful things in place before Hurricane Melissa.
This phase focused on
shelters,
Lord God, clearing access routes for emergency response personnel, and stabilizing high-risk areas to prevent secondary loss of life.
You're there.
Then we entered the emergency relief phase. The phase in which we are now. This phase includes clearing and reopening primary road corridors, accelerating the restoration of power and water systems, and expanding mobile and community-level distribution of relief supplies. We have also mobilized medical outreach to shelters and affected districts, while ensuring psychosocial support for children, elderly persons, and vulnerable families. International humanitarian assistance, including airlifted supplies and technical teams, began to arrive and integrate with Jamaica's national response system. The central aim of this phase is to relieve suffering, reestablish safe access to communities, and stabilize essential services.
I always say sound good, but this is not what has been happening though.
Stabilization and recovery phase, which focuses on helping families and businesses regain a sense of normalcy and restoring the foundations of daily life. This includes bringing schools back into operation as quickly and as safely as possible. Providing targeted support
let's
to
all
small
listen.
businesses and farmers. Restoring public transportation routes. And accelerating the repairs of government buildings and community facilities.
But
households whose homes are habitable will begin returning from shelters,
What do you mean when it's
while
up?
those whose properties were destroyed or severely damaged will receive temporary housing assistance and construction support.
Yeah.
Utilities will complete permanent repairs, and municipal authorities will operationalize debris removal and rehabilitation programs. This stage is about
admins and not kin, all right? So, you just hold it down for me, admin.
Resume work,
I'm not looking at no comment.
Finally, Madam Speaker, the reconstruction and rebuilding phase will ensure that Jamaica emerges stronger than before.
You're there.
This
hold
phase
it down
will
for
see
me, admin.
major capital works begin to rebuild and climate-proof critical infrastructure, including roads, bridges, water treatment plants, health facilities, and power and telecommunication network. We're going to see those being built out. Housing reconstruction will prioritize stronger building standards, improved drainage, land use guidance, and support for our formal construction systems. We will partner with the international development institutions, private sector actors, and regional allies to secure financing and technical expertise. Throughout this phase, we will apply the principle of building forward better, ensuring that public investments not only replace what was lost, but reduce risk and improve resilience against future climate-related events. This is the phase where we overcome the adversity caused by this shock and come out ahead.
You're there.
With modernized frameworks and long-term planning for better resilience against future shocks that will be inevitable. Madam Speaker, Hurricane Melissa was not only a national tragedy.
Madam Speaker now mute our husband.
The storm's 13-foot
Juliet, why you not mute your husband?
On our western coastline.
Backside.
And up to 30 inches of rain in the Central Highlands reveal the devastating power of a new climate reality.
You know, mute the mic here today,
the era of once in a generation hurricane is over. In fact, the era of being hit by a hurricane once every 30 years is over.
You're there.
Imagine we were hit by Beryl. Then immediately after that, a tropical storm. Almost 6 weeks of consistent rains. And then this year, then drought. And then this year to be hit by a Category 5 hurricane. So, climate science confirms that storms are now intensifying faster, moving slower, and carrying more rain than ever before, emerging from warmer oceans and testing the limits of our infrastructure and preparedness. The combination of wind, storm surge, and rain, as we saw with Melissa, creates cascading failures of infrastructure that storm scientists call a glimpse into the Caribbean's future.
Andrew, tried telling us that a man-made hurricane.
At the same time, Jamaica's vulnerability is not limited to hurricanes.
Andrew,
they're an island in a seismically
active region. It's not a man-made hurricane himself, love.
And our communities remain at risk of earthquakes and associated hazards such as tsunamis. The multiple hazard risk profile means that our investment in resilience must span across sectors and hazards rather than being narrowly focused. We have to mainstream resilience in everything that we do. But, Madam Speaker, nature's power does not have to determine our fate. Resilience is not beyond us. It is within our control. Regional experience from the not too distant past is illustrative. Consider the contrast between two earthquakes that occurred in 2010. In Haiti, on January 12th, a magnitude 7 hurricane earthquake occurred. And in Chile, on February 27th, a magnitude 8.8 earthquake occurred. The earthquake in Chile was more powerful, yet it resulted in fewer than 800 deaths. Whereas in Haiti, the earthquake caused over 300,000 fatalities and the near collapse of their infrastructure. What is the difference? What does it reveal?
My lovely admins, I cannot look at the comment section. Probably not for today. So I'm asking you guys to hold it down for me. I know you guys will do an awesome job.
Institutional preparedness and resource capacity. That is the lesson for Jamaica. Every repaired bridge, re-roofed home, and rebuilt road must be designed for the storms of tomorrow, not the storms of yesterday.
You're there. We need to hear how the billions going to be spent.
Water systems and power grids must be restored and upgraded to higher standards. Our coastline strengthened through mangroves, reefs, and natural defenses, and our agriculture sector diversified and climate smart.
All of that sound good. You want to hear how the billions are going to spend for the Jamaican people.
And for
we can cut out some of the fancy talking. We know all of that we would like for Jamaica. We want to know how the money are going to spend.
A single large-scale disaster can wipe out years of progress and impose long-term fiscal and social costs. By building better now, we reduce future repair bills, shorten economic downtime, protect lives, and preserve our national development trajectory. Also, Madam Speaker, let me remind all Jamaicans that resilience is not solely the job of the government. It is a national project that requires every community member, every business, every agency, and every parish to participate. Because in a world where storms will become stronger, quicker, and more unpredictable, our greatest defense is preparedness. Madam Speaker, it is clear that Hurricane Melissa will have a profound economic impact on our country. The storm struck the heart of Jamaica's productive belt. It tore through our breadbasket parish of St. Elizabeth. It disrupted our tourism corridor, stretching from Westmoreland through to St. James and into Trelawney and St. Anne.
No,
and
just said it the whole island, sir.
Housing, community infrastructure, commercial operations, and public utilities.
What it should be said is it the whole island, but certain parish was more adversely affected than others.
This is not only a humanitarian crisis. It is a shock to livelihoods, incomes, and local economies. Madam Speaker, detailed assessments are still underway, but I wish to share very preliminary, high-level estimates only to illustrate the scale of the devastation. Based on benchmarks from comparable regional disasters, physical damage to housing, commercial buildings, roads, electricity, water, and telecommunications infrastructure is estimated between $6 to $7 billion US, equivalent to roughly.
That means they have enough money then.
To 32%.
When you pay attention, chat, look at the numbers that he's quoting and the amount of money with them when get. Then they have more than enough money for put Jamaica back on the right track.
Members, a major hit to our economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I want the country to.
Can I sit on billions right now?
That we have never had a disaster of this magnitude with this economic footprint in terms of the impact. Not Gilbert, not Ivan, all of those were relatively small to our GDP. To lose 30% of your GDP is significant. So, still preliminary. I believe it is conservative based upon the damage that we have assessed, but the relevant public agencies are doing their assessment in addition to what they have to collate from the private sector. And so I would say in another few weeks we should have what the real figure is, but we can use this as a benchmark based upon what other countries would have been impacted and what we have observed and what has happened to us here in Jamaica with a Category 5 hurricane. We anticipate a temporary slowdown in economic activity, particularly in the most affected parishes. Agricultural output will decline in the short term as farmers replant and livestock operations recover. The tourism sector, while resilient and working swiftly to reopen, will require targeted support to restore capacity and confidence. Small and medium-sized enterprises, especially those in retail, manufacturing and services, and the creative industries, have sustained significant losses and will need liquidity and recovery support to rebuild inventories, repair their facilities, and restart operations. At the same time, supply chains for food, construction materials, and consumer goods are being actively restored, though some market disruption may occur in the immediate weeks ahead. A very preliminary estimate suggests that short-term economic output could decline by 8 to 13%. Madam Speaker, this means that revenues will decline as well as economic activity slows, even as expenditures must increase to finance emergency relief, recovery, and reconstruction. This will place pressure on our fiscal targets. Pressure is a euphemism. As we did during the COVID-19 pandemic, my administration will act responsibly, transparently, and with foresight to protect lives and livelihoods while preserving Jamaica's hard-won macroeconomic stability. In this regard, it will become necessary to activate the lawful provisions under Section 48C of the Financial Administration and Audit Act, which allows for the temporary suspension of the fiscal rules in certain circumstances of national emergency or extraordinary economic disruption. We anticipate a rise in the debt-to-GDP ratio in the short to medium term as resources are channeled into rebuilding and resilience. Yet, Jamaica's record for disciplined fiscal management provides the credibility and space to respond decisively. The sacrifices that we have made and how this government has administered our fiscal affairs would have put us in the best position that this country has ever been to respond to a disaster. Our focus remains clear: to restore livelihoods, protect the vulnerable, and ensure that Jamaica emerges from this crisis stronger, more resilient, and more competitive than before. However, Madam Speaker, it is also important to state that restoring economic activity must proceed alongside relief and restoration efforts. This is not insensitivity, it is necessity. Reviving production, reopening tourism, and restarting commerce are essential to restore incomes, rebuild confidence, and mitigate the wider economic shock. Recovery is not just about clearing debris. It is about getting Jamaicans back to work and our economy back on its feet. We are already activating
Mr.
the fiscal
Prime
and
Minister, we
financial
want here the money I
instruments
go spend,
available to us
the billions.
and engaging our international development partners.
Lord God,
to
we know
support
these things
the
have to
recovery
be
effort.
done. Come tell me about the
Cash flow
money.
support to households,
Jamaican people
emergency
need it
social
now.
programs,
No.
concessional financing, and targeted industry assistance will form part of a responsible and disciplined economic response. The Ministry of Finance and the Public Service will bring further details to this Honourable House as assessments are completed and funding packages finalised with our multilateral and bilateral partners.
On a notice, how should I interrupt the mic? Make we see how she will
say,
behave now with the
Madam
other
Speaker,
people.
That
Speaker of the House, I hope you behave just as nice to the other people as you do for your husband. You never mute the mic not one time. So let us see if you're going to be on your best behavior today.
Fields destroyed in St. Elizabeth, in Manchester, in Westmoreland, must be replaced by fields brought into production in St. Thomas, in St. Mary, in Clarendon, in St. Catherine.
All over Jamaica.
The other half of the island that is not impacted, we must increase our output. Madam Speaker, this is a good point for me to say that there is a notion emerging that somehow we are getting a lot of aid and there's a lot of money coming in. Yes, we have made provisions, but all of that is temporary. And at some point, all of that will dry up. And the government must be able to stand on its own 2 feet.
Here, there.
And manage its finances, because while we intend to ensure that the relief phase is efficiently conducted, the recovery phase might be extended, and therefore with not just the loss of physical assets, but the requirement to spend on increased social safety net, vulnerable, welfare and social support, we will have to have the revenues to support it. And so I repeat the point, Madam Speaker, that economic recovery is not an insensitivity to human suffering. Economic recovery, it is the way in which we bring human suffering to an end early.
You're there.
And those persons who are opposed to us going back to school and going back to work, get that out of your mind.
You're there.
Get the economy up and running right away. That is the only way.
You're there.
Only way we are going to be able to fund the recovery quickly. And I urge all Jamaicans to get that mindset in. For the half of Jamaica that has not been affected, your productivity will have to increase right away. Madam Speaker, Melissa dealt a severe blow to our national road network and public infrastructure. The National Works Agency reports that 151 roads were impacted island-wide, with landslides, fallen trees, flooded corridors, covered pavements, and breakaways, rendering many communities temporarily inaccessible. At peak, 134 roads were blocked, particularly across the western parishes most directly in the path of the storm. I'm pleased to report that through urgent mobilization of national and private resources, more than 1/3 of the affected corridors have been cleared or reopened to at least single-lane access.
With Acorns Early, I'm teaching my kid how money adds up, starting with chores. Watch this. How much do you think this toy costs? $1. And this one? $2.
Seaports, water treatment plants, and emergency shelters, ensuring that life-saving assistance and relief supplies can reach communities swiftly. This recovery effort is a testament to the determination and discipline of our technical teams and the spirit of Jamaican partnership. The NAA has deployed 14 parish-level technical field teams supported by engineers and administrative staff and working hand in glove with the Jamaica Public Service, National Water Commission, ADPEM, and the security forces. We have also activated the full capacity of Jamaica's contracting ecosystem. Major contractors, including our Spark project partners, Czech, and local road maintenance firms are assisting with heavy equipment. The private sector has stepped up. Bauxite companies, housing developers,
You're there.
and other equipment owners have volunteered machinery and operating time. I want to thank them. Community members armed with chainsaws and machetes have joined the effort, and we express our gratitude for their assistance.
Don't call me right now. Don't call me.
Of our roads.
It's going to
This is
interrupt the
Jamaican
live,
spirit
please.
at work. Simultaneously, technical teams are assessing bridges, river training structures, retaining walls, coastal revetments, gully systems, including the Sandy Gully and the north and south coast gullies, and the national traffic signal network. Once access is restored across all affected communities, we will transition from emergency access to full road rehabilitation, including surface reconstruction where roads have been washed out or undermined. Restoring drivability on major corridors and designing long-term resilient solutions will form a core part of our national reconstruction plan. Madam Speaker, on housing and shelter, Melissa has caused extensive damage to the nation's housing stock, particularly in western parishes. Leveraging the National Geospatial Intelligence capacity, the government has, for the first time in our history, executed a rapid, high-resolution national housing damage assessment.
You're there. That's not true.
Effort coordinated through the National Spatial
That's
Data
not true,
Management
sir.
Branch
What you
and
mean by it's the
supported by
first in
international
history
technology partners,
that the government
analyzed
has
more than
executed?
428,000 buildings across Jamaica.
You're there.
Satellite data and drone verification indicate that
Yeah.
approximately 116,000 structures.
We don't want
sustained
nobody to be
severe
bragging. The
or
people that need
catastrophic
help.
damage,
Tell us how the money going to be
concentrated
distributed.
in Westmoreland, St. Elizabeth, and
We
Manchester.
don't want here in this government. It's
These
the only
findings are
government
now
did
guiding
it.
targeted relief and reconstruction planning across communities. This is a big change.
I said this is the only
Madam
government
Speaker.
ever did it.
In Beryl, we didn't have this capacity, but we have since invested in, and we are now able to have more definitive and scientifically driven data as to the extent of the damage. This now will help us in budgeting, and it will help us in allocating resources. Madam Speaker, we are now transitioning from emergency sheltering to stabilization and repair. The ministry is conducting field verification in priority communities.
Oh, so then they have a whole heap of emergency shelter. All the people were saying that there were no emergency shelters.
As access is restored to
The man said there was a whole lot of
communities in the West, we will
emergency shelters
complete
was in
our
place.
verification, accelerate roofing support, and deploy building materials, tarpaulins, and rapid repair kits.
Did Andrew only, did the
safety
Prime Minister just
for-
mention that there was a whole lot of emergency shelters that were in
habitation
place?
for
Now
our
the people are out here saying otherwise.
The data now being integrated into the post-disaster needs assessment will shape a resilient housing and building recovery program. Minister Montague has been asked to lead the process of determining the kinds of housing solutions and how they will be deployed, because
You're there.
we have to utilize new building technologies, including prefabricated and containerized solutions.
Then, if that's the case, the prefab houses containers been here, sir. So why not give them out to the people?
Rapidly deployed. Minister Montague has been tasked to spearhead that program, and he has already convened a technical work.
But the prefab and the container houses are already here. So a lot of people can
give houses, which is very soon. We have solutions that match the problem, but solutions that are easy to deploy and cost effective.
Can't take this enough.
With regard to electricity, restoration of power is proceeding in phases, prioritizing hospitals, water plants, communication, backbones, and dense residential zones. The all clear for restoration of utility services enable JPS and independent contractors to enter the field at scale, while the Ministry with responsibility for energy is coordinating grid stabilization and resolving localized issues such as low voltage and restored feeders. Yesterday, the JPS would have given an update on the status of electricity restoration. The government has given them strategic direction to make a priority to restore large commercial and urban centers in addition to critical public facilities. Moreover, they have been tasked in their grid restoration efforts to explore relocating, where feasible, the grid underground. We have given them directives regarding Montego Bay, the Elegant Corridor, and the Hip Strip would be two areas where focus should be given to put the grid underground. If other areas are feasible, going underground is expensive. So we have to balance between expense and getting the grid up. But if we are getting the grid up and we can get some resilience in it, then we have to get the resilience in. So we will balance as we can, but it wouldn't be possible for all the grid that we have to put back up to put it underground. But in areas where it makes strategic sense, then we are encouraging them and indeed directing them to ensure that that is done. We will continue to update the country on a parish-by-parish basis on re-energization percentages as the network is repaired and rebuilt. Quick word on Petrojam. Petrojam has maintained fuel supply continuity despite flooding at its Montego Bay terminal. The cleanup is complete and structural and electrical assessments are underway before resuming western loading. In the interim, all tanker loading is being conducted through Kingston with extended operating hours to ensure uninterrupted national fuel availability. In terms of water, Madam Speaker, Hurricane Melissa has significantly disrupted water supply across the country, with the operational capacity of the National Water Commission deeply affected by power outages, blocked intakes, turbidity, landslides, and damage to electromechanical systems. Several key NWC offices, including those in Mandeville, Santa Cruz, Bogue, Falmouth, and Morant Bay, have been forced to close due to flooding, structural damage, and loss of access, while others continue to operate under constrained conditions. In total, more than 631 water systems were initially affected island-wide, with western parishes experiencing the most severe disruption as electricity supply remains limited. Supply restoration has been heavily reliant on generator power, where grid access remains unavailable, which means intermittent service in some areas. Even so, progress continues. Approximately 66% of NWC customers now have supply restored, with St. Catherine, St. Thomas achieving restoration rates above 87% and 84% respectively.
Also, St. Thomas have water.
Has deployed approximately 40 generators to potable water facilities and 8 to wastewater plants, and has supplemented this capacity through private rental arrangements to stabilize service delivery. Madam Speaker, you'll recall that in Beryl, we weren't able to have this level of water restoration, primarily because we didn't have backup power for NWC. We learned the lesson and we started to, one, a program to have all our major water supply have independent backup, and that is being worked on. But in the interim, we secured backup generation capacity, for which we are now benefiting from. Madam Speaker. The Minister of Water will give you more details on the recovery. But Madam Speaker, I'm pleased to inform this Honourable House and the people of Jamaica that all members of Parliament will be allocated the following sums for the trucking of water. $2 million to the following constituencies most affected by the hurricane.
Wanna listen?
Westmoreland, Hanover, St. James, St. Elizabeth, Manchester and Trelawney.
So I'm to Portland.
$1.5 billion to selected constituencies in the following parishes: St. Catherine, St. Andrew, Clarendon and St. Anne.
So I'm to St. Thomas and Portland and St. Catherine. Mr. Prime Minister, what happened to St. Catherine, Portland, St. Mary and St. Thomas?
Which the Minister will explain. But, Madam Speaker, we have $1 million to constituencies in the following parishes: in Clarendon, in St. Anne, and in St. Catherine, to certain constituencies. And I won't call out these names.
So what I mean by certain constituencies?
Well, there's one constituencies.
Certain constituency. I will get money.
In St. Andrew, Clarendon, and St. Anne, because they are particularly affected. I don't want to go through the detail of calling out each constituency.
When I hear what going chat.
$1 million for others.
Yeah. What can go so?
In terms of telecommunications, Madam Speaker, after the all clear, utility crews mounted full field activities with cross-sector coordination to restore poles, repair fiber and power cell sites.
When you hear how the billions are going to spend?
Nodes and critical government communications are being prioritized in affected town centers. To restore nationwide connectivity, 600 Starlink terminals are being deployed to first responders, government facilities, NGOs, members of Parliament and councillors. Now, Madam Speaker, not all members of Parliament have been provided with Starlink capabilities, but certainly those who are critically affected, like the member from Eastern Westmoreland and Central Westmoreland. And but the affected parishes have been provided. Flow and Digicel continue rapid recovery with up to 86% service restoration reported in some categories. Additional spectrum was allocated to carriers to accelerate repairs. The government will also deploy roving mobile teams, which is an important service. The government will deploy roving mobile teams with Starlink connectivity and charging stations to affected communities and urban spaces to allow residents to make contact with loved ones or make short, urgent calls. In terms of public transportation, the Jamaica Urban Transit Company infrastructure and fleet remains mostly intact, with only minor structural damage and limited operational disruption reported. The Portmore Depot experienced minor damage to the perimeter wall and electrical systems. Spanish Town saw minimal impact, and Rockford had minor ceiling damage. The Montego Bay Depot had significant infrastructure damage, with 4 buses sustaining severe damage. Fuel dispensing has been altered as electric pumps are inoperable, and the depot has no generator. 10 buses from the Montego Bay fleet can be mobilized once minimal power is restored to the facility. Additionally, some drivers are marooned in their communities due to blocked access roads and poor communications. Now, despite infrastructure damage, air navigation services have been fully restored nationwide. Radar and air-to-ground communication have been re-established with support from Airtel. A 24/7 landing permit operation is in effect for humanitarian flights, and monitoring of unmanned aircraft, drones, is being strengthened to protect aviation safety. All airports reopened within 48 hours of the storm. Relief flights began on October 29th, and commercial passenger services resumed on October 30th. From October 29th to November 2, airports processed 350 flights, including 162 commercial flights and 117 relief and military missions. Domestic air drones, including Negril and Tinson Pen, are also operational. I want to spend a little bit of time on public health and our mental health response. Madam Speaker, the health system has been tested in an extraordinary way by Hurricane Melissa. Even before landfall, the Ministry of Health and Wellness activated its Health Emergency Operations Center and deployed response teams across all regions. Hospitals transitioned to emergency-only services, and health centers remained open to support communities until safe conditions emerged. These early preparedness allowed the health sector to move quickly into its emergency response posture once the storm passed. The hurricane has caused severe damage to several major health facilities, particularly across western parishes. The Black River Hospital in St. Elizabeth, our type C hospital in that parish, suffered catastrophic roof loss, structural failure, and complete utility disruption, requiring the evacuation of 71 patients to Mandeville and Maypen. The Falmouth Hospital in Trelawney lost most of its roofing and suffered extensive flooding, compromising electrical systems and diagnostic and clinical equipment. The Cornwall Regional Hospital, our key Type A facility in Western Jamaica, lost more than half of its effective capacity, including severe damage to temporary wards and the accident and emergency department. Noel Holmes Hospital and the Sabla Lamar Hospital similarly sustained serious roof and water damage, with power and water outages affecting patient services. These facilities are currently providing limited emergency services while staff continue rapid discharge where clinically safe and access to equipment integrity is needed. In primary care, the picture reflects a scale of national disruption. In the southeast of Jamaica, approximately 2/3 of facilities, and in the southern region, 2/3 of facilities are expected to have full operations within days. In the western region, where the impact was more severe, we expect a longer time for recovery for our primary healthcare systems. Several health centers have suffered significant structural damage, and temporary clinical spaces are being arranged to ensure continuity of care, especially for maternal health, chronic disease management, and child health services. To stabilize service delivery, the ministry will establish temporary field hospitals in the hardest hit parishes. These will provide emergency inpatient and outpatient capacity while permanent facilities are repaired. The ministry is also mobilizing medical supplies, pharmaceuticals, oxygen, and essential equipment to critical sites while conducting urgent testing and certification of hospital equipment to ensure safe reuse. Beyond clinical services, we are aggressively addressing post-disaster public health risks. Flooding, stagnant water, and sanitation disruption create favorable conditions for mosquito breeding and the spread of waterborne and vector-borne diseases. Public health teams are deploying enhanced vector control operations, including larvicide distribution to 120 households. A fogging campaign is being mounted now, Madam Speaker, with the support of private contractors and expanded field staff. Water quality monitoring is being intensified at all treatment plants with chlorination and turbidity testing to protect the population from gastroenteritis and hepatitis A and other water-related illnesses. Food safety teams are inspecting facilities and supervising safe disposal of spoiled food and livestock carcasses. Sanitation and other management operations are being strengthened to protect communities and reduce disease transmission. Madam Speaker, beyond the physical destruction and the economic disruption, the toll of Hurricane Melissa on the hearts and minds of our people has been profound. Families huddled together as winds howled and floodwaters rose. Parents worked desperately to shield their children from fear. Elderly Jamaicans, some recalling storms of decades past, relived deep anxieties as they once again face nature's fury. Many of our brothers and sisters have endured the unimaginable, the loss of loved ones, the loss of homes built over a lifetime, and the loss of lives and livelihoods that sustained entire families. There are thousands who, even now, are sleeping in shelters or with relatives, searching for stability in a world abruptly turned upside down. Therefore, Madam Speaker, the state must also address the emotional and psychological burden of the disaster. And by the way, Madam Speaker, it would not only affect our constituents, even members inside here are impacted. And I saw the grief palpably expressed by the member from Southern St. James. It is the impact of the hurricane, Madam Speaker, especially for our children. For many of them, they cannot come to grips with what has happened, to the disruption of their lives going to school, to the loss of people in their community. Just the disruption in their regular meals. They are trying to come to grips with that. And with the hurricane also comes
Wayfarer's top 3 game day tips. First, create a cozy pregame spot. Next, grill from
Falmouth Hospital, Madam Speaker. That was an issue raised, and I was quite surprised that it was, by someone who was at the hospital, who was brave enough to say, I am a mental health patient, and it was very important that I got the services here, but we need more mental health services because our people are reacting to this crisis in ways that are becoming antisocial. And therefore, we must pay attention. I want to give the nation the commitment that the Ministry of Health is augmenting its psychosocial and mental health operations as it also seeks to mount its conventional health response. And now is a good time, Madam Speaker, to call for volunteers who are trained in this regard to reach out to the Ministry of Health, because we simply would not have enough trained professionals on staff to mount the kinds of response that would be necessary. Madam Speaker, I now turn to the education system. Assessments are still underway, but we already know that many schools, especially in the western parishes, have been severely damaged or destroyed, and others across the island have also been affected. At present, 446 schools serving nearly 150,000 students face major disruption. We have all seen the images: roofs lost, classrooms flooded, learning tools destroyed. Many schools also face extended outages of electricity, water, and internet. The situation in the western parishes is particularly grave and poses a real risk of significant learning loss. Our children need their classrooms and the structure they provide. Every day out of school is a day of lost opportunity. Yet, Madam Speaker, we must also be pragmatic. The doors of many schools cannot reopen immediately. So while we move with urgency to repair and rebuild, we must act now to resume learning through innovative and flexible arrangements so that no child is left behind. After Hurricane Beryl, we responded swiftly, aided by the timing of the summer break. This time, we must move even faster as Hurricane Melissa offers no such reprieve. Our focus will therefore be on three clear priorities: safe reopening, where facilities permit; continuity of learning through blended, remote, and alternative sites where needed; and accelerated reconstruction to return schools to permanent classrooms to return students to permanent classrooms as soon as possible. Madam Speaker, we successfully navigated the education system through the global pandemic and the aftermath of Hurricane Beryl. We will do so once again. We will get our children learning safely, swiftly, and in stronger, smarter schools than before. At the peak of the emergency, Madam Speaker, approximately 15,000 Jamaicans were accommodated in official shelters. Shelters will remain open as long as needed, with food, water, medical support, and psychological services will be provided through the Ministry of Labour and Social Security and the Ministry of Local Government. Madam Speaker, specifically in relation to marooned communities, of which there are likely in excess of 30 marooned communities, the JDF is in the process, or has already established, 22 humanitarian assistance and disaster relief outposts in the following areas: in St. Elizabeth, Burnt Savannah, Newmarket, Springfield, Burnt Savannah. But there's an error on my presentation, nevertheless, because they have 7 of them are under St. Elizabeth, which of course that's Westmoreland. So that was the error. In Westmoreland, Sav, Darlaston, Lennox, Bigwood, Bluefields, Betheltown, Amity, Beeson Spring, Catch Valley, Frome, Roaring River, Content, Glenbrook, Reno, Catadupa. I hope I've gotten all those names correctly, and all the members. Catadupa is St. James, South St. James. And in Trelawney, Cambridge, South St. James again. Adelphi is you. Adelphi is East Central. Well, they have it, they tagged the parishes incorrectly. Maroon Town. Where is Wirefence? South Trelawney, Jackson Town, Falmouth, and Perth. So these are all the communities. I hope the members of Parliament would have noted the establishment of these. They will be establishing more outposts as they are able to stand them up. And the objective is that these will serve as humanitarian bases in what they call a hub and spoke operation. So right now, they were moving humanitarian aid through airlift and other means directly to the various communities. Now the phase that they're transitioning into is to move it to the hub where they can store a lot, they can do 24-hour movement, and then from the hub to all the communities, including communities that are maroon. That way we can scale up rapidly the response to communities that have not yet been serviced. A lot of this is Westmoreland. A lot of what we have said is Westmoreland. Madam Speaker, just quickly on security and order response. The national security architecture for the country has been fully mobilized in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa. From the earliest moments of this disaster, the Jamaica Defense Force and the Jamaica Constabulary Force have stood at the front line of our national response, upholding order, saving lives, and ensuring that essential relief reaches our people. Their efforts have been heroic, and the nation owes them deep gratitude. The Jamaica Defense Force moved with urgency immediately after the storm's passage. Within hours, troops established a forward disaster relief site at the Luana Community Center near Black River and began clearing block routes, many on foot, to ensure ambulances, utility crews, and relief agencies could reach our most vulnerable communities. Madam Speaker, I think here I should give you and the nation first-hand experience. Madam Speaker, the day immediately after the hurricane's passage, I asked the JDF to facilitate an aerial tour. But I sent my forward team to meet me in Black River. When we landed in Black River, having circled 3 or 4 times to find an appropriate landing site and getting communications, we recognized that the team that we sent could not pass through Holland Bamboo. It was totally blocked. And the JDF, along with residents, came out and they started work. When I returned from that tour, I went to Sav and other areas, went back home. I got a call from one of the officers in charge saying that they were cutting their way up to 4 a.m. the following morning. The entire stretch was blocked. It was compounded because there were vehicles trying to get in, blocking the convoys, and it was chaos, but they managed. And it is good that we have a reserve of logistics capabilities and an engineering and operational force like the JDF that we call on them in times of disaster. Madam Speaker, the JCF is not to be outdone, because whilst we look upon the police mainly as a security force, you would be surprised that they fill the gap being the social worker, being the firefighter, helping with medical issues, in addition to, the commissioner led the way with his power saw cutting down trees, but you can see that they were multifunctional in the disaster, and again, commendations to them. So, Madam Speaker, the JDF did suffer some losses. Several bases in the Western Command, including Frome, Paradise Park, Montpelier, and the Black River Coast Guard Station, were severely damaged. And we will ensure that these are rebuilt very quickly because that's important to stand up the operations. Working with the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the JDF has established a major relief hub at Up Park Camp, producing and distributing more than 11,000 family care packages delivered by both ground convoys and helicopter missions, including support from the U.S. Chinook aircrafts. This operation represents the highest standard of joint civil-military coordination and underscores the discipline and capacity of our armed forces. We also recognize and appreciate the international cooperation that has strengthened our security response. Support has come from the United States Southern Command, the government of El Salvador, with 287 personnel deployed, Canada through its operational support hub, the United Kingdom with an offshore patrol vessel, and regional partners including Belize, Bermuda, Guyana, Trinidad and Tobago, Barbados, and the Cayman Islands, which have provided support and aerial support, including helicopter support. This international solidarity has, and Venezuela. Venezuela has provided humanitarian relief. This international solidarity has significantly boosted our humanitarian and security operations. Madam Speaker, even as the JDF has worked tirelessly in the field, the Jamaica Constabulary Force has executed its mandate to maintain public order and protect infrastructure. More than 12,000 police officers were mobilized across all divisions before the storm's arrival, with incident command centers activated and integrated into the national and parish emergency operations. Following landfall, the JCF immediately transitioned to securing communities, protecting hospitals, water facilities, Petrojam and our airports, and escorting relief supplies into affected zones. I'm pleased to report that due to early planning, strong community cooperation, and visible police presence, we have had no major looting or disorder incident to date. Madam Speaker, I'm aware that there are persons calling for the implementation of emergency measures, states of public emergency or curfews. Madam Speaker, these are being considered, but we are very sensitive to the current situation, and we do not want to impose further hardship on persons by imposing a security measure. At some point, however, when we have established, as we are now doing, the hub and spoke for a supply chain operation to ensure that there is a consistent flow of relief into communities, that will have to be protected. And therefore, we will have to put special measures around the routes that have to be traveled and protecting the areas where they are stored and distributed. As well as, Madam Speaker, we have to consider the availability of the human resources. And so there are areas that are sensitive that we will have to man and have regular foot patrols and the like. And therefore, it may become necessary in moderating that to have curfews and other measures put in place. But we are not at that point just yet. But these things are being planned out so that the security operations don't come into conflict with the humanitarian situation that currently exists. Madam Speaker, the eyes of the world have been on Jamaica as we confronted this ordeal, and the outpouring of solidarity has been extraordinary and deeply moving. The generosity shown to us reflects Jamaica's high standing and goodwill on the global stage. Even before Hurricane Melissa's landfall. Messages of support and offers of assistance came from every region of the world. Since then, our relief efforts have been fortified by early and tangible aid from bilateral partners, regional international organizations, non-governmental organizations, and the Jamaican diaspora. We are especially grateful for the outreach of His Majesty the King, the United Nations Secretary General, and many other heads of government who have conveyed their solidarity with Jamaica. We extend heartfelt thanks to our CARICOM brothers and sisters and regional agencies such as SEDIMA, CARFA, and the Caribbean Development Bank for their immediate engagement. Our bilateral partners from Belgium, Canada, Colombia, El Salvador, Venezuela, the European Union, the Dominican Republic, France, Germany, Luxembourg, India, Mexico, the Netherlands, Peru, Spain, the United Kingdom, the United States. A list that is, I have not exhausted. China, Japan, they've all committed support. And, Madam Speaker, what we have to do, in addition to the NGOs, which I haven't even mentioned, there's so many of them, but permit me to say the World Central Kitchen, Doctors Without Borders, Global Empowerment Mission, we call them GEM, Direct Relief, Samaritan's Purse. And of course, our own food for the poor. Madam Speaker, on our supportjamaica.gov.jm, which was built in record time by the Amber Group, which is the central hub for donations to Jamaica from the diaspora and the world. We have so far raised 170 million Jamaican dollars in contributions on that platform.
You're there.
And I encourage Jamaicans and our friends all over the world to give. Supportjamaica.gov.jm. All contributions go centrally to ADPEM, which is the government's official disaster management agency. Madam Speaker, I wish to make some important announcements as to how we are going to be managing the disaster. Madam Speaker, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM.
So all the people watching on the live, can you please like up the live for me? I would appreciate it. Please send time.
Work with all the critical agencies.
Come on, my lovely people watching.
Sector, international aid
like up the live for me,
and
please.
Governments. It is, however, clear that the response to Hurricane Melissa will require significant logistics experience. It will also require significant coordination. The Jamaica Defense Force is currently assisting with the logistics support to both ODPEM and the Ministry of Labor and Social Security, especially given the fact that many communities are situated in difficult terrain and several have been marooned. Given the nature of the response needed for the current relief effort and the coming reconstruction effort, it is important that ODPEM and the JDF have even greater levels of collaboration. As such, effective immediately, the Office of Disaster Preparedness and Emergency Management, ODPEM, is reassigned to the Office of the Prime Minister to strengthen logistical collaboration with the Jamaica Defense Force. Madam Speaker, the Jamaica Defense Force is already under the Office of the Prime Minister. Madam Speaker, this move will ensure that the relief effort is well coordinated and coordinated across government. The best place to achieve that, given the nature of the crisis and the speed with which we want the recovery, is for it to be centrally positioned in the office of the Prime Minister, which is what the office of the Prime Minister does. It coordinates all the entities. This realignment establishes virtually a single point for emergency logistics and further tightens coordination with relief partners. This is about speed, Madam Speaker. The new arrangement will accelerate the distribution of relief supplies in the aftermath of Hurricane Melissa, better serve the most affected communities, and restore normalcy as quickly as possible. Madam Speaker, from a strategic perspective, and it is important that this be said, I've just listed the level of international response and NGO response. One of the things we don't want to happen is any fumbling. So logistics and coordination is absolutely important. And what we will create, Madam Speaker, is a plug and play system. Government can't do it all. We are the first to recognize that. We don't have enough helicopters. We don't have enough social workers. We don't have enough engineers. We don't have enough doctors. But what we want is a coordinated system where all of the goodwill that comes, whilst we get that benefit, but we must get one other thing from that, and that is synergy. And you can only get synergy where the sum of the parts are greater than the whole, when you have coordination. And that is the one thing that this administration has been good at, in the management of crises and disasters. So we are going to create that plug and play operation to take advantage of the goodwill. At the end of the day, the people who are giving to Jamaica must say it was worth giving and I will give more. At the end of the day, they must... territorialism, or corruption. So we are going to make sure that we display to the world a first-class relief and recovery and rebuilding operation. Madam Speaker, the passage of Hurricane Melissa has left debris, disruption, and dislocation in communities across the island. To accelerate recovery and restore order, the government will launch a National Cleanup Week. The Minister of Local Government already explained what that will be, but it will be the mobilization of the NSWMA, the NWA, and other entities that have capacity with the removal of debris. Now, it may very well be a cleanup month based upon the level of debris that has to be moved. In this effort, the members of Parliament will be called upon to play a critical role. There is a sense, Madam Speaker, that I've heard being bandied about that some members of Parliament were not integrated into the operations, or that there was some kind of favoritism where some constituencies got and others didn't get. Madam Speaker, let me stand here and say that there was never any intention or action on this government designed to marginalize, discriminate, isolate, alienate any member of parliament. And we must dismiss out of hand any argument that would seek to divide this country politically when it comes to the distribution of aid. As far as I'm concerned, every Jamaican is entitled to the aid that comes in and to the spending of the government. There will be no politicization of aid. It never happened in COVID, it never happened in Beryl, and it will not happen. Madam Speaker, I can point out to you that the member from Eastern Westmoreland made his public comments. I saw them. I reached out to the leader of the opposition. I recognized your pain in what you said. I saw your public comments. I recognized the pain in what you said, and I asked the member from Southeast Clarendon, the Minister of Labour and Social Security, to reach out to you. It is only a matter of logistics why I was not able to land in Darliston or in White House. My friend, if the helicopters could have landed me there, I would have landed there, and I would have been by your side if I could find you. There was no attempt whatsoever. And the suffering of Jamaicans in your constituency, the suffering of Jamaicans in the constituency of North West St. Elizabeth is of concern. There are constituencies over here that we have not reached. Southern Trelawney, we haven't reached. Northwestern St. Elizabeth, we haven't reached. So all I'm saying, Madam Speaker, and to Jamaica, I must stand up firmly and close the door on any attempt to politicize aid in Jamaica. So in the cleanup, Madam Speaker, in the cleanup, where we're going to need the MPs to be active, we're going to need the MPs to be active in mobilization, because we won't have enough people to send into community to clean up. It will have to be the community's leader of the opposition that do the cleanup. You have to mobilize the people. But it is also an opportunity for communities that have not had a chance to earn anything. We're going to try to put together a little stipend. Let me say it's a little stipend. It's not a pay. We will provide colleagues.
Thanks for watching, my lovely people. Can you like up the live for me? I appreciate you guys liking up the live.
The restart of economic activity through the cleanup. That's small stipend. They will be able to go to the shop if shops are open. They'll get a little cash in hand to restart. That's the objective. But it does require, however, value for money. And that is why we're going to need the MPs there to ensure that we get the value for money. And I think that is only fair. The program is being developed. We will have to budget it, but you can start to prepare for that program. The minister very shortly will come and announce how that program will operate. But we really need to move the debris because it's a health hazard as well as an economic obstacle in many instances. In terms of housing support, Madam Speaker, across the island, our first priority has been to deliver food, water, and medical support to every affected community. But we know that beyond these essentials, the greatest need is now shelter. Too many of our brothers and sisters have lost the very roofs over their heads. To address this urgent need, I am announcing a building support program for households in the most affected parishes as follows, and this will be an MP-driven program. Again, St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. $10 million will be allocated to each constituency in those parishes. You know, there was a debate in this house about whether or not any distribution to MPs should be done on a constituency basis equally. And I am of the view that every seat is equal. But in a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. In a disaster, that cannot hold. And I hope that MPs who were not as badly affected will not put pressure on me to make increased allocation. And so 10 million to the affected constituencies. Let me repeat: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Manchester, Hanover, St. James, Trelawney. For St. Anne, Manchester, and Clarendon, $5 million will be allocated to each constituency.
You're there.
For St. Anne,
that's
Manchester,
all. Out of the billions of dollars. They taking this thing for a joke.
Thank you for reminding me.
Oh, they taking this thing for a joke. And these people are suffering.
No, it's good. Unless they made an error and correct it.
That's all?
But
Out
Manchester
of
really
billions of dollars?
I will resolve it. No, there might very well be an error in it, but yes,
this is not a joke.
I mean that Manchester really should be fine. But let me resolve it.
Why are they even laughing
really
like?
Listening. I appreciate that.
Oh God.
All right. I will resolve it. Forgive. There's an error obviously in the speech. I will resolve it. I will resolve it. And for the other constituencies, $3 million per constituency. I think it's a fair.
This is not even funny. These people lost their house, their life. This is not even a time for anybody to be laughing. I don't find no humor in this shit.
And I will resolve the issue with Manchester. Madam Speaker, in addition to this, the National Housing Trust has activated a comprehensive package of support measures to help its contributors and mortgagors recover from the devastation caused by Hurricane Melissa. First, I wish to remind the public that all NHT mortgagors are insured under the Trust's House Owners Comprehensive Policy, which covers damage from hurricane, storms, floods, fire, and other perils. The NHT has already mobilized its branches island-wide to help mortgagors prepare and process their insurance claims quickly and efficiently. Second, recognizing that many families will need time to prioritize home repairs, the NHT will grant an automatic 6 months moratorium on mortgage payments for mortgagors in the worst affected parishes: St. Elizabeth, Westmoreland, Hanover, Trelawney, St. James, Manchester, and St. Anne. This measure will assist some 20,000 homeowners. For all other parishes, the NHT will continue to consider individual moratorium applications for those who have lost income or face special hardships. Third, the Trust will introduce a special home improvement loan of up to $3.5 million at an interest rate of 2%, available to both existing mortgagors and contributors who need to repair or rebuild their homes as a result of the Finally, to further ease burdens, the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes for those who the NHD will provide a special grant of up to $500,000 to contributors to repair damage to their homes or those of immediate family members. So we have kind of extended it a little bit. Grants will be awarded based on demonstrated need and the level of impact. So this is an assessment-based grant. Madam Speaker, we are also working with our international partners and the private sector to identify housing solutions, as I said before, that can be rapidly deployed at scale across most parishes. And as I said before, Minister Montague is working on that. There are some really viable pre-built, prefabricated housing solutions. They may not be block and steel, but they are very durable and can be rapidly deployed as shelter solutions. Madam Speaker, in addition to the $1.5 million that had already been allocated to each constituency before the hurricane, which was for emergency relief, food, medicine, tarps, and so forth, I'm announcing an additional $1.5 million, which the leader of the opposition already announced it for me yesterday. The nation should know that we talk. And it looks like I'm telling him too much because he's announcing the things before I... But the leader of the opposition correctly got that one. So there will be another 1.5 million for MPs to use for the emergency response. But this one would be now mostly focused on food, medicine. Now, Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approached customs. Madam Speaker, to speed the flow of humanitarian goods, the government had approved customs duty and GCT exemption for the importation of relief supplies for one month, expiring November 28th. Recognizing that recovery efforts are ongoing and will extend beyond this 1 month period, we will extend this relief period by a further month to the end of December 2025. This measure will ensure that every shipment of relief supplies can reach our people quickly, efficiently, and without additional financial burden. In addition to the eligible items already announced by the Jamaica Customs, and in consideration of the extent of the damage to the electricity grid in the most affected parishes and projected timelines for complete restoration, I am announcing that persons will be allowed to import Starlink equipment and other such equipment, inverters and solar power equipment, including panels and batteries, free of custom duty and GCT. Madam Speaker, this is in an attempt to get power and communication back into the communities that really need it. That really need it. Now, I know others will take advantage of it, but I appeal to every Jamaican. If you can buy 2 Starlinks and send one to a family or a community, do it. If you can buy solar batteries and solar panels and give it to a community or to a household in the affected parts of Jamaica, please do it. I will look into that. because they are already giving a loan. But I know that when we give up these revenues, others will benefit from it who don't really need it. So I've asked Jamaicans to use your conscience. Ensure that the other half of Jamaica that is suffering now benefit from this relief. Madam Speaker, while the needs across our nation are indeed great, we must also remain judicious and disciplined in the use of public funds. So, Leader of the Opposition, I couldn't give $50 million just so. Because, Madam Speaker, we have the bill coming from health. We have the bill coming for cleaning. We have the bill coming for schools. We have the bills coming for JDF and JCF. We have the bill coming for agriculture, for tourism, for water, not to mention the bill for roads. So, Leader of the Opposition, and as I say, it sounds good, but it's wishful thinking. We couldn't do it. And the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, we may very well over a period of time do it. But at this present time, we have to literally be very careful with how we spend.
You're there. You're there.
So, the truth is, Leader of the Opposition, as we speak, we see that there are other weather systems forming. We don't know. So we just have to be very careful with the resources that we have.
With the money.
And that's why I give the assurance that what we have will be fairly shared for every Jamaican. I want to announce two other things. In the COVID pandemic, we established an oversight committee of Parliament to review the work of the Ministry of Health in its operations. We will establish a similar oversight committee of Parliament to review the distribution, welfare, relief operations. I've given a direction to the House Leader to speak with the opposition leader of opposition business to establish that committee, the terms and how it will work. Madam Speaker, it is in the interest of the government to have the highest level of transparency in what we do. There is no victory for JLP communities to have food and PMP communities not.
You're there.
There is no victory, or vice versa.
You're there.
None whatsoever. And therefore,
so it has become
we will
political.
put in place every measure to ensure that whatever is given to us and whatever we spend from our budget,
it seems like it's
fairly
becoming
done,
political.
everybody can see it and everyone benefits. So as soon as we meet again by the next Parliament, that committee should be in place. A special joint select committee possibly that will look at the operations. All right? Madam Speaker, in a time of crisis, every Jamaican wants to participate. One of the greatest challenges you face in a time of crisis is to organize goodwill. It is a Leader of the Opposition, it is a real challenge to organize goodwill. Because there are some people who want to come and go on their own. There are some people who are saying, tell me what to do. And there are some who will tell you what to do. And it can become very confusing, bearing in mind that government operates by law and a particular structure. And it is very difficult to get people who have to operate by law to operate outside of that. Meaning that you could have people with goodwill coming and say, do that, do this. But the agent who has the legal responsibility say, I can't take an instruction from you. Or I have to see something in writing. Or it has to go through a process. And so I have had to be spending my time in structuring the cabinet, in structuring how our permanent secretaries and others in government operate, to bear in mind that whilst we have the legal framework, there is an emergency, and therefore we have to operate with more speed and alacrity because there is human suffering that we are trying to minimize. That in itself is a task that the public will never see and probably will not understand. But that is why you have government. That is government business. Government must deal with that. And that is what I have been doing. And yes, we recognize the calls that have been made about establishing that committee or putting that. Of course we know that. We have never operated outside of that framework. We should, however, recognize that the history of our country is that the government does not stand on its own. Never has. Constitutionally, we are probably the only country where the leader of the opposition is entrenched in the Constitution. That it means that I can't go off on my own as Prime Minister.
Pay with Klarna everywhere. Choose debit or pay later. Sign up with Klarna. Get your card in 60 seconds.
Don't compromise quality insurance for savings or your time for this ad. Hit that skip button. Or
our churches play a fundamental role in governance. So to our private sector. The question is now, how do you bring all of that together in a framework that satisfies everyone's purpose for participating, but at the same time delivers the best result for the people? That takes a little time to work out. We have people who have international reach, international influence, people in high offices all over the world. We have to put in place a structure that, so if they were to use their office, it's meaningful. They don't meet up on red tape and bureaucracy and then get frustrated and say, I can't bother with Jamaica. So before I pull people in, I have to make sure that when they come in, there is something meaningful for them to do. And we have been building that out. So I've had a discussion with Prime Minister Pattison and Prime Minister Golding. Yes, they are former Prime Ministers, but I always refer to them as Prime Ministers. Because that is the respect I pay to them. So I've had a discussion with them, and they're eager to help. But we have to find the right mechanism as to how they can give support. And we are in dialogue as to how that could happen. There are other Jamaicans in high offices all over the world calling me up, I want to help, I want to help. We are working out how that can be. Now, in the phase that we are, which is the relief phase, there's not so much to do other than to make sure the logistics work. Because in the relief phase, what you need is that aid comes in, it moves to a storage area which is central, you record it, which is what ADPEM does, and then the Ministry of Labour and Social Security, the Ministry of Local Government say, hey, here are the communities, here are the people, and the JDF works out the logistics for movement, where private sector vehicles and other vehicles and trucks and whatever can assist in moving them to the hub in the region, and then they are broken down into spokes into various communities. And that is what we are trying to establish now, because that supply chain operation has to stand up for at least 2 months. And then, of course, Parliament has to have oversight on it. Why is this community getting and not that community? Hey, you forgot that community. Hey, you should put some more. That's what the oversight committee will do. And that's how that relief I'm expecting will operate. But we will have to immediately, almost in parallel, transition to recovery, where we have to answer difficult questions. Should Black River be where it is? How do we build a resilient town in Black River? What are we going to do with Falmouth?
What?
Precisely. What are we going to do with the hospitals? Should we rebuild these hospitals with zinc roofs? And schools. All of these are questions that we have to work out. And there are political issues involved. And so it really does need that kind of senior experienced politicians, statesmen who have been in the system long, who can help that conversation along in order to make these massive changes that are needed to make Jamaica resilient. So as we get into those discussions, you will see the importance of having persons like our statesmen, people of influence and high regard in the society, guiding debate, convening, and giving support. And that is being structured as we speak. This is a crisis, Madam Speaker. And it is one thing that we must never do, is waste a crisis. The other word for crisis is opportunity. And this is an opportunity, Madam Speaker, to make Jamaica stronger. So as I close, Madam Speaker, I want to thank all Jamaicans who have participated in the national effort to ensure that we are recovering, that our brothers and sisters in the other half of the island that was struck, that they are getting relief. It is not perfect. I am certain that as I speak, there are communities now that have not yet been reached, that there may very well be bodies that have not yet been collected. I am certain that there is a child that is hungry as I speak. But as I speak, I know, Madam Speaker, that the systems are being rapidly put in place to ensure that that human suffering comes to an end very quickly. And I know that with unity, togetherness, genuine unity and togetherness, Jamaica will recover and recover stronger. Madam Speaker, there is the National Partnership Council. Again, a feature, has become a feature of our government. I intend to call the Partnership Council either this week or early next week, depending on diaries and availability. And in that, under that umbrella, we will have the churches and all the other civic organizations to have this discussion around national unity for recovery. And it can't only be a discussion. There has to be commitment to unity. And as I stand here, Madam Speaker, I am committed to a unified approach to the recovery. So, Madam Speaker, I want to thank the House and thank listeners and thank Jamaicans for paying attention to this presentation. God bless Jamaica.
Responding will be the Leader of the Opposition. Prime Minister, could you turn the mics off?
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I want to thank the Prime Minister for his presentation today. It covered a great deal of ground and provided useful information as to how we as members of Parliament can expect to operate in the near future, and also the longer-term approach that the government wishes to take in grappling with this catastrophic tragedy that has befallen our nation. I want to also take this opportunity to express my heartfelt condolences to the families and loved ones of all who have perished in this terrible catastrophe, whether in the storm itself or in the aftermath. And to express my sympathies to the thousands of Jamaicans whose lives have been severely disrupted by the impact of this cataclysmic hurricane. Madam Speaker, in this House are many MPs who have been living among the people who are going through this suffering. And there's no doubt that it has been a traumatic and emotional experience for them. I hope that this afternoon you will allow them an opportunity to speak to what they've seen and what their thoughts and feelings are about it, because I think it's very important that they get that opportunity. Many of them have come from far to be here today, and I hope you will indulge them with that. Madam Speaker, we are fortunate, I think, that Kingston and St. Andrew was largely spared from the devastation of this hurricane. It has enabled the government to function. It has enabled Parliament to meet in normal conditions. And it shows the critical importance of being able to function as a government and as political representatives in the aftermath of an event such as this. One can't really imagine how we would be responding were the path of that hurricane to have been one which had visited that kind of destruction on the decision-making nerve center of the country. And it's something we have to bear in mind as we plan for the future. Madam Speaker, I look forward to hearing from the Minister of Finance in due course, hopefully soon, on the financial implications of what has happened, on the layered financing structure that is in place for dealing with natural disasters in Jamaica. We know that the agricultural sector has suffered an immense hit. Farmers have suffered huge losses. And of course, in that regard, it is not limited to just the West. I know that there are farmers in many parts of Jamaica which have suffered major hits, Minister. I'm sure you would agree. And so in how we design relief, we have to take that into account. It is, although the West is devastated and requires utmost care and attention and sympathy and resources and coordination, as you have said, there are many other parts of Jamaica that have also suffered significant damage and losses. And that has to be taken into account as well. I think everyone in this House must be extremely concerned about the impact of the hurricane on our students. Many schools have been very badly hit, and unfortunately, in those areas, that has also come with the failing of the electricity supply system and internet connectivity. So the option which existed in COVID, where one could rapidly try to transition to online learning and so on, is not readily available as a solution at this time. This means that we have to have a very creative and flexible approach to bringing students back into the education system to minimize learning loss. Take into account the need to do so safely, and also take into account the psychological impact that this hurricane has had on them, and indeed their teachers, principals, and everyone else involved in the education system. And we look forward to hearing more of that in due course. Madam Speaker, right now, there are tens of thousands, one doesn't know the number.
House Leader, the member's time for speaking has expired. The standing orders were not suspended. The standing orders, Leader, the standing orders were not suspended to allow for the completion. Could you please move? So move.
Madam Speaker, I ask that the standing orders be suspended to allow the Leader of the Opposition to complete his presentation.
Here they start. Here they start. Yeah.
Those in favor? Those against? The ayes have it.
Thank you, Minister, and thank you, Madam Speaker. I appreciate that indulgence. I think that's a good start. I hope, as I've said, similar indulgences will be afforded my colleagues when their time comes to respond to the Prime Minister's statement. Where I was going, Madam Speaker, I was making the point that as we speak, tens of thousands, an untold number really, of our Jamaican people are living in conditions which are unbearable. Many have lost homes. Many have lost all their belongings. Many are in communities which are cut off. Many are struggling to find food. Water is a big problem because the water supply systems have been impacted by the lack of electricity, the turbidity, and other issues. So we must move rapidly to address that crisis. The provision of shelter and the longer-term solutions to the rebuilding of homes or the establishment of new solutions, that will require planning and careful thought. And I endorse the view that we cannot just do what we've done before, because we are in a new era. We're in an era where the Caribbean Sea is warming, and it has several negative effects. And one of those effects is that the storms that are emerging in the season are stronger, and they're also moving and in ways which we weren't accustomed to before. So we can expect, as the Prime Minister has said, that we will have fairly frequent situations which we have to address. And we must be more resilient, and that requires serious thought as to how we rebuild and where we rebuild. But in the immediate term, you have little children, you have the elderly, you have pregnant mothers, you have persons with disabilities who are catching at a friend's house or a relative's house. Some of them are just under a makeshift piece of tarpaulin strung up over some structure or other, and they are at risk. The public health aspect of this, the Prime Minister made reference to it. I think it's a very serious issue. There is massive settlement of water in large parts of St. Elizabeth and Westmoreland, and no doubt other parishes. St. Anne, rivers broke their banks. Underground water is behaving in unusual ways, and when you pass through, you see numerous dead animals, often in those ponded waters. This presents a serious public health risk, and we have to address that very carefully. There is also a major public health risk from people with chronic diseases who need medications which need to be kept in cool in cool conditions, refrigerated conditions, who don't have access to refrigerated conditions for medication. There's a huge risk that those persons will suffer negative health consequences from not being able to maintain their normal course of treatment for their conditions. We have to address that. So in the hub and spoke model which we're trying to build out, that needs to be taken into account fully so that there can be a delivery of health care to people in communities who are currently not getting it. And I'm sure others will speak to that in greater detail. Prime Minister, I have some concerns, and you've heard my recommendation, and I'm glad you're giving it thought, and I'm glad you're listening to what we're saying so carefully, and listening to others as well. That's a good thing. I too want to endorse, as I have been, the importance of us as leaders in this society being united in the response to this terrible calamity. Communities have supporters of both sides who have been impacted by this thing. We are Jamaicans and we love each other, we love our nation, and we must approach dealing with this with mutual respect, care, and love. And I can assure you, Prime Minister, that we genuinely seek to be part of the solution to help Jamaica get through this. You can count on us cooperating and playing a constructive role to the extent we are afforded the opportunity to do so. And I hope that in the design of the overall mechanism for charting the course forward, for dealing with the rollout of the recovery and reconstruction, that the need for unity, the confidence that will come when people at home and abroad see a united mechanism, a mechanism built on that principle being the way in which it is done. I think that there's a lot to be said for that, and that's why I made the recommendation that I have. One of the concerns I have is currently the command structure is not well understood, if there is one. And I have had to be trying to identify points of entry into the disaster response mechanisms that have been established in order to provide information, vital information, that those who are handling the response need to know in order to respond and deal with these situations quickly. And we need to have clear lines of communication into the chain of command for the different aspects of what is manifesting itself now, so that we know who to approach and how to deal with that. It cannot be ad hoc. It cannot be totally informal. It must be transparent. It must be clear what it is. And there must be accountability for how the resources which are going to be deployed are deployed, so that the people providing those resources, especially persons who are doing it out of the kindness or generosity of their heart and spirit, feel that the sacrifice they are making on behalf of the Jamaican people are sacrifices that were well worth making, and they feel that their sacrifices have been treated with the respect that is due to it, by ensuring that it is used for the desired purpose and for no other purpose. And in that governance oversight mechanism isn't clear to me at the moment, and I think it's very important that it become clear and that it be consistent with the principle of inclusion and unity that you have spoken to in your address. Prime Minister, the impact on the economy will be profound. The tourism sector has taken a heavy hit. Many hotel assets have suffered damage in various degrees of severity. Some have been very badly hit, some have been moderately hit, some have got off relatively lightly, and we're glad for that. We know that agriculture is going to be, has been decimated, and this will impact the price of foods, and this will impact the availability of foods. And we need to address food security issues quickly so that our people do not suffer in this time.
Good luck, everyone. Riva Black, 101 here.
For a period of time. I don't know whether that mechanism will be considered again or whether there will be a massive public works program to absorb and labor and provide people with opportunities to earn something during the period of recovery. But these things are very important, and we look forward to hearing them and even participating in their development if we're allowed to do so. Madam Speaker, equity is critical at this time. People are on edge, people are angry, people are afraid, and if they feel that the way in which the relief effort is being deployed on the ground is not consistent with the way in which it is being articulated in Parliament and elsewhere, it will cause problems. I have some concerns. I am not going to raise them here today. I'm going to speak because they're very specific issues, but I'm going to talk to the persons who I think can address them. But the point I want to make, Prime Minister, is that you have given a commitment here today that nobody should suffer any disadvantage because of anything to do with political affiliation or indeed who they are and where they are. The issue is need and the response to the need. And everybody should be treated proportionately in accordance with the extent of their need. And what I would ask every member of this House, every MP who's going to have responsibility for allocations that are being provided to help people, to approach it in that way and to ensure that it's based on need and it's not based on whether the person vote for this one or that one. That is not relevant now. What matters now is helping our people to get back on their feet, whether they're at Labour Right or PNP or no P at all. Prime Minister, I agree with the extension of the exemption from customs duty for an additional month to facilitate the tremendous goodwill towards Jamaica being actualized in tangible demonstrations of things coming into the country to help our people. 30 days would have been unduly short given the time it takes to get the logistics of those things worked through. An additional month is helpful, and I'm sure you will take that into account and under advisement and watch it as things go along. But I do agree with that, and in fact I had suggested it as well, so I'm glad we're seeing it. The National Week of the Cleanup Week, like the idea, I think it will help us all pull together. One thing I would say in the design of it, already there are people in my constituency, for example, I'm sure I'm not the only one, who want to go and help in the areas where they're the most need. And I would love if in the National Cleanup Week, we're all going to get some allocation for that. But to the extent that our cleanup needs are not nearly at the scale of some other areas, if we could lend a hand in other communities or constituencies where there's a real need, I think that would be a very therapeutic and appropriate way of us all pitching in this time. I will. Them go alert. So, Prime Minister, I don't want to speak for long because I know others need to have an opportunity to speak today. And as I've said before, I hope they'll be afforded that opportunity. There's a lot of pain in the land, a lot of angst, and we as human beings who care about our constituents, who are elected to represent and want to make their lives better, faced with the suffering that is there on the ground, it is having a serious impact on everybody, including us. And I think being able to come here and speak to those issues, express our concerns, and so on is a very important thing. And I now will yield to allow others to make their own contributions today. I thank you, Madam Speaker. I thank you, colleagues.
Thank you, Leader of the Opposition. Members, the floor is now open for you to ask questions. Prime Minister, if it so pleases you, we would appreciate your response at the end of all questions. Thank you, Prime Minister. Members? Members, could you turn your mics off, please? Prime Minister, could you turn your mic on, please? No, Prime Minister, just turn your mic on again, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The Leader of the Opposition raised a few concerns, not really questions, but I will treat them as questions and answer them as such. Right, so, but I'll treat them as questions and answer them as such. The concern about health care. The government is taking it seriously. The Minister of Health has brought to Cabinet yesterday a budget for the initial recovery of the healthcare system. We'll make that public very shortly as soon as we have resolved how we're going to fund it. But an important point towards the provision of healthcare. 7 days after the disaster struck, we can report that we have stood up a field hospital in Black River, sponsored by Samaritan's Purse. It is a 30-bed facility with operating theater, ICU, pharmacy. It comes with a helicopter, I gather. It has 60 staff members from the Samaritan's Purse, supported by Jamaican doctors, and they will be able to augment the services that are now very limited from the Black River Hospital for the entire Central District. It is almost as if you have a brand new functioning hospital right there. Of course, it is temporary in infrastructure, but it will provide the service. We will have 4 more deployed around the island in short order, and these will be in the Noel Homes in Hanover, SAV in Westmoreland, and Cornwall Regional. So, and Falmouth, forgive me, and Falmouth, I missed Falmouth. I said 4 and I called 3. So in the most affected areas, we will see a restoration of service delivery in healthcare that will ensure that the worst that we would expect after such a disaster does not materialize. As it relates to management, Leader of the Opposition, you will recall that last year I commissioned a review of our disaster response mechanism, because seeing it firsthand, I was not satisfied with the response. Though we did very well, we were able within 2 weeks to move to the recovery stage and so forth. But, you know, in today's world, everyone expects immediate, instantaneous response. People are not going to take into consideration that, you know, Jamaica is a small country. You know, we don't have enough helicopters. It takes 3 or 4 days for the helicopters from our partners to get here. They're not going to be concerned that the roads are blocked and the equipment mobilization takes some time. When I look at the response of Jamaica relative to other countries that have been impacted by a Category 5, to report what we can report on day 6, which is yesterday. So, Madam Speaker, you know, but having said that, we recognize that we must strengthen coordination and management so that the questions that you raise regarding certainty as to who is responsible or certainty of response. I mean, we have had a complaint that, you know, someone is calling to give aid or to make an offer for something and they can't get a response. Or the person who answers says, I have to go and clear it at another level and then it takes so long to come back. These are issues which we have to resolve. And I would say to you, Leader of the Opposition, that in addition to moving ODPEM under OPM, we have also now appointed a new Director General. It's Commander Alvin Gale. He has been seconded from the JDF to take leadership of ODPEM to streamline the operations of ODPEM. So we are taking the measures, and we will be doing other changes and restructuring as we are at the same time scaling up the relief effort.
Floor is now open to questions. Members, I would have had a discussion with the Leader of Opposition Business. We will continue to apply the standing orders. Please take a look at Standing Order 17, particularly 17. (17B) as it relates to Prime Minister's question time, and 17C as it relates to Minister's question time. Thanks, members. And this is particularly as it relates to national disasters and matters of national interest. Thank you. First member.
Madam Speaker.
The member from Portland Eastern. I haven't touched your mic, member from Portland Eastern. I haven't touched it. So, members. The member from Manchester South.
It's my mic.
The member from Westmoreland Eastern, sorry. The mic system doesn't allow for any of those arrangements. When I suggested that members, take your seat. Take your seat, member from Westmoreland Eastern. Members, the first sitting had persons turning on their mics and turning them off like a musical chair. We worked out as a parliament, along with the clerks, a mechanism that we thought would be very efficient. However, persons have raised objections to holding their hand up. If hands are held up and we do not turn on the mic until you're recognized, then it makes it easier if you turn your mic off by accident, to be able to speak next. However, you currently have 4 mics on. So if you turn off your mic, then we will have to turn off everyone's mic to go back to that order. Or we just continue. So, member from Portland Eastern, you would know we're at the back of the line. I didn't touch your mic other than to turn it on. Member from Westmoreland East, your questions, please.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I have a few questions. At the outset, nothing that I say is politically motivated. I guess when a politician is saying something, people naturally think it's political because it's coming from a politician.
Member, just straight to the question.
Madam Speaker, please. I have a mother that is in St. Anne. I don't have one in here.
Member, question, please.
Don't do that.
Straight to the question, member.
I am simply trying to set the context of what I'm saying by saying that nothing that I have to say here is politically motivated. It's a simple point. My first question, because I think we have to learn from what we do. My first question. In the preparation for the hurricane, when the initial allocation was made of $200 million, we were told that some of us constituencies were not included in that allocation of $200 million. We raised concerns because the system was bigger than the country, several times bigger, and clearly would have affected every parish. Looking at what happened, where Westmoreland was told that we're not a priority, and landfall was made in eastern Westmoreland, do we think that we have the appropriate mechanism in place to make the allocations for impending weather events like this?
Good question. Good question.
My second question. In the lead up again to the hurricane, we were told that the supplies would not get to the shelters until the system started and persons started going to the centers. Do you think that was the appropriate decision, seeing that we were preparing for a Category 5 hurricane, and naturally it would have caused disruption in access to get to the shelters? I could have made my points easier, but since you want to put them as questions, I just put them as questions. Do we have an idea, an accurate count of the number of deaths that have occurred in Jamaica? No. Because based on my count from my own constituency, in the Darliston division, there are 12. In the Leamington division, 4. Betheltown division, 2. And 7 in the White House division, which is giving me 25. So do we have an accurate count as to the number of deaths that have taken place in the country? Do we believe that the response to retrieve the bodies was appropriate? Because we've had funeral homes that had to come for some, and the community members had to bury others in eastern Westmoreland. So do we believe that the response has been adequate to pick up the bodies? In terms of the response of ministries, departments, and agencies, how do we go about making an assessment on how we deploy personnel from ministries, departments, and agencies to constituencies that are affected? Eastern Westmoreland is where landfall was made, a Category 5 hurricane, the eye of it. So that carries the eye wall. Went across the constituency, starting in New Hope to Darleston to Betheltown, and then over into South St. James. Total devastation and destruction along the entire constituency. Do we believe that enough personnel from ministries, departments, and agencies have been mobilized for a constituency like this, which is in fact the actual ground zero of the hurricane? My next question: do we think that the condition that obtains in the shelters currently is adequate? The Maud McLeod shelter in Darleston, the persons there are sleeping on the desk that are within the shelter. Not one mattress is at the facility. Females are there that are having their monthly cycles without any form of supplies being given to that center. 3-month-old baby in the center. Do we think that sufficient work is being done in the centers, in the shelters that currently obtain? There are over, by my estimation, at least 2,000 homes that are flat, not damaged. They are totally destroyed. The foundation is all that you see. Do we think enough is being done to provide shelter, food, and water for those persons who have been displaced? I'm encouraged, Prime Minister, by some of what you have said. I'm encouraged by some of what you have said. Not being unreasonable, I'm encouraged by some of what you have said. The establishment of the points by the JDF is something that is long overdue, so that we can have access points across the constituency where you can airlift supplies to and then distribute from there, and that we can get medical personnel in place. The hurricane itself and the destruction that it has caused is a high-stress environment. To be hypertensive, have high blood pressure, and be out of your medication in a high-stress environment is a recipe for disaster. It's a ticking time bomb. So those persons that are within Eastern Westmoreland that needs medical care, the centers have to be set up urgently in a way that the army can mobilize persons to the different communities so they can attend to persons. There are at least 3 communities that are still marooned. And at Grand Gala, we see soldiers repelling from the helicopters. It can't be just practice. Now is the real thing. Beeston Spring, which have Beeston Spring, the 3 areas that are maroon, Beeston Spring, and a community called Touch Valley, and there's another section there called Left Hall, and then you have Amity, up in close to the border with South St. James. PM, my own assessment, and I'm not a specialist in this, but my own assessment, looking at the damage to the housing stock, is that I believe that the only thing that I see that can quickly deal with it is the containerized housing.
A win is a win. A win is a
South College because South College...
Do you have any more questions?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, I do.
Okay, please,
yes,
member.
I do. Yes, I do.
Please, member, questions.
What is the possibility of us, as a country, putting a program together that will see us being able, and I'm sure the other members from Westmoreland will speak for themselves, but and surrounding areas, because Northwest St. Elizabeth is in the same category, you know. So it's not a political point that I am making, because the damage there is just as bad. What is the possibility of us being able to implement a program quickly where we can get some of those units erected, so at least we can get that mother from under the tarpaulin with her children? That is the current situation in Belmont and Bluefields and elsewhere across the constituency. We also need, if you want me to ask it as a question, when will we be able to have some repair done to the gas station facilities, so that when somebody says to me they are coming from Kingston, I don't have to ask them to bring me low sulfur so that I can drive? When will we have some facility in place that persons can get access to fuel, so that they can, even the elected officials, that they can actually go to the communities? Madam Speaker, I have nothing but concern for the people that I represent. I don't care who they voted for. Not my concern at this time. I'm talking about the people and how they are currently living. Anybody who doubts what I am saying, take a trip for yourself. And if it doesn't cause you to have tears, then you are not human. Anybody that doubts what I'm saying, take a trip for yourself. If you think that I am just here grandstanding, take a trip for yourself and have a look at the situation. It is a total and complete disaster in eastern Westmoreland, and this is a cry for help.
The member from Westmoreland Central. So 2 mics. Member from St. Andrew East, please do not turn your mic off.
Thank you, Madam Speaker.
Members, for those persons who have turned their mics on, it would be very good to put them up, because then it's easier to see that your mic has been turned on. Thank you.
All right, Madam Speaker. My first question is with regards to the health system. There was mention of the hospitals and what was done to the public hospitals that were damaged. But I'm asking if there's any consideration for the health centers, especially in the remote areas, because it's still difficult for persons to travel from those areas to the Savlamar Hospital, for example. So places like Williamsfield, places like Cornwall Mountain, that the centers have been really devastated, destroyed in a significant way. We're wondering if anything will be put in place, like, for example, makeshift tents, for example, and the staffing will still be there to accommodate these people, so you don't have to come to the South Hospital that you already know has been burdened before the disaster, much less after the disaster. So we're asking for some consideration there. My second question is regards to the container houses. The member from Eastern had mentioned it, but I just want to know if there will be an actual allocation per constituency, especially in those areas that were damaged so badly. Westmoreland is known for wooden structures, and you would have imagined those of you who would have been there would have seen the devastation. Thousands of houses were destroyed. We know we won't be able to fix everybody's house. But we're asking, for example, in these constituencies like Westmoreland Central, Westmoreland Eastern, Westmoreland Western, for example, so all the constituencies that were severely damaged, if there will be a special allocation for those constituencies that we know had these wooden structures and naturally would have suffered more than other constituencies that don't have so many wooden structures. And if so, with the construction of these, will it be a centralized thing where they're constructed one place and sent down? Or will we have contractors in different areas so this process can be speeded up instead of us waiting on one particular person to make all of these, which would definitely take a longer time. My next thing, the Prime Minister mentioned that he's waiting on the road bill, which we all know is a serious thing. But what I'm asking, if there has been any deployment of the NWA team to identify emergency areas. So for example, in the Froome area, the road has severely been compromised where the bridge at Ricky's River is. Part of the road is gone. So the bridge is now severely compromised and we don't know if it can collapse at any point in time. So we're asking if a team has already been deployed to actually identify the emergency areas, because those areas will have to be looked at even before you get the total road bill for where the damage is expected to be. And my last question is with regards to the distribution of the food packages. I know the Prime Minister stated earlier in his presentation that there is no intent from the government to have any unfair or politicize anything. But there was a situation today in Westmoreland, and even after I spoke to the minister, the minister reached out to me this morning to let me know that an helicopter was coming down with food supplies from the ministry. And after the helicopter came, there was total chaos down there. What I can tell you is that before the helicopter came, the former MP and his team was there with trucks and stuff. There are videos of everything being loaded basically in those things. So the thing you're trying to avoid by not politicizing it actually played out today. The minister had no part in it based on my conversations with him because he directly spoke to me. And I had a team who went there. But the staff, I don't know where the communication came from. But what we realized happened that somebody obviously communicated with the former member of parliament. I am not there obviously today because I'm here. And what really happened is that distribution today has now been labeled as being political, because everybody who went there would have seen that former politics being played out today. So what we're trying to avoid, just as what you said, actually played out in central Westmoreland today. So what I'm asking is, going forward, how do we decide on how we do this type of distribution? Because one, if you go to one place and everybody comes there, there's going to be chaos. So naturally, if a helicopter is coming, one, you're going to need enough police and soldier presence there. And what we would want to know is that we ensure that the coordination is there, where we know exactly what is coming, where we're going to collect it. So if the MP is in charge, we will coordinate with the local team at the ministry, at the NIS office. We'll speak to the manager, for example, work out the way how we'll distribute, because somebody has to lead it. And in this case, you have to trust the member of parliament to say we're not going to send it only to PNP community, but we are Jamaicans, and we will be distributing it equally across every community that we know needs assistance. So we have no problem in working out all of those things, but we don't want what happened today to ever happen again, because, as I said, it left a bitter taste in the mouths of many of the citizens. Persons have been calling me since I've been here. I'm always on the phone, people texting me, asking me, what is really happening here? Because, as I said, what would have showed up today, it would seem as if the former MP, who is now the caretaker, was the person who was in charge today on spot for the distribution of the items. And we don't want that to be in the thoughts of the people, because we know that is supposed to be the case. So going forward, I'm asking, how are we going to do these things differently so we don't have a repeat of what happened today? So those are my questions.
Madam Speaker, thank you, the member from St. Andrew South East, and then
Clarendon North.
And then the member from Clarendon North.
Madam Speaker, my question to the Prime Minister. Can the government confirm whether it has received confirmation that it will get the full payout of the $150 million US catastrophe bond which we undertook. My understanding is that we have received, or the payout is on its way for the 70 million Caribbean catastrophe risk insurance bond. CRIF, the policy. If we get the full payout, Madam Speaker, both would account to amount about 35 billion Jamaican dollars. Based on the Prime Minister's initial estimates of between 6 to 7 billion US dollars, which is about 1 trillion Jamaican dollars, even with the relaxation of the fiscal rules, and you might have 2 to 3% of GDP space, we still will have a significant shortfall. So my question to the government and the Ministry of Finance, have we commenced discussions, negotiations, submissions, particularly to the IMF that has a rapid funding facility that would allow us to access money to deal with all the priorities that you spoke about and that the members have raised? Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I spent the last 6 days going through the constituency of Northern Clarendon, and the housing stock have been severely affected. So I'd like to ask the Prime Minister if the allocation of $5 million to the constituency, if he believes that is sufficient. We have more than 500 homes that have been affected.